morning, class. Welcome to World History class. Today we're going to learn about Africa. It began with Menes because he was the first pharaoh of Egypt, and he united Upper and Lower Egypt.
So what about the guy, King Tut?
Well, he was a boy king whose tomb remained untouched for 2,000 years, giving us tons of information about how the ancient Egyptians lived and eventually died.
So what about Cleopatra?
Cleopatra was the queen of Egypt who seduced Caesar and Mark Antony so she could get total control of Egypt. Later, Kush was also was instated later, earlier, and it was a counterpart to ancient Egypt. It was washed away by a dam, and there are little remains of it, so we do not know very much of Kush.
Interesting. At the same time, there was Mansa Musa, who is the king of Mali, who made his empire famous by throwing so much gold in the streets of Cairo that the price of gold fell for 20 years. And Mali is a rich gold empire known because of Mansa Musa's pilgrimage.
Are there any other African empires?
Oh yes, there's Songhai, which is known for the city of Timbuktu. The city of Timbuktu is the center of the Islamic scholarship during Songhai's empire. And then there's Ghana, which was a powerful military empire with over 200,000 soldiers.
Wow.
And then there's Zimbabwe, which is South Africa's kingdom that is famous for its stone structures that Europeans doubted could be African. And a long time later, Africa began to become colonized by the colonial powers. And colonial powers are Britain, France, Belgium, Portugal, Italy, and Germany.
What is colonization?
Colonization is the process of acquiring and maintaining colonies. Now back to what I was saying, Belgium was probably the most harsh colony because of King Leopold II, who was the Belgian king who colonized the Congo all for himself to make a fortune in rubber. He enslaved natives and ordered officials to cut off workers' hands and killed 10 million.
Why did he do that?
He did this so that the people would work harder and fear him.
In the 1800s, there was a scramble for Africa. The scramble for Africa was when European powers went rushing into Africa to cut a piece of the continent for themselves, which led to the Berlin Conference because of the countries' disputes over borders and resources in those lands.
So what's the Berlin Conference?
The Berlin Conference was in 1885 when 13 European powers who had colonized Africa came together to cut up Africa 123 years ago and resolve those disputes over land.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so now, after all this happened, there were 6 leaders that stood out. There was Kwame Nkrumah, who was the first leader of the first sub-Saharan country to gain independence in Ghana. And then there is Julius Nyerere, who is the independence leader of Tanzania, he is also one of 26 children. And there's also Robert Mugabe, who is the president of Zimbabwe since 1980, and is very corrupt, leading to mass inflation. Then there's Jomo Kenyatta, who is the first president of Kenya, and locked up by the Brits for alleged ties to the Mau Mau Rebellion. Then there's Leopold Senghor, the first president of Senegal, who is also a poet. Then there's Nelson Mandela, who fought against apartheid. Apartheid apartheid is a system separating the country into racial groups under white control. Black South Africans could only leave their teeny area to work for white South Africans, and had to carry passes with them at all times. And then he was jailed for 27 years. Upon his release, he became the first democratically elected president of South Africa.
Okay. Were there any lasting effects of colonization in Africa?
Why, yes, there was 4. There was no infrastructure, which means that there weren't very many buildings, schools, or hospitals. There was also rivalries and conflicts between ethnic groups, Sudan and Somalia and others. There was also cash crops and export-led development rather than substantial farming. And a cash crop is a crop grown for money, not food. So this would be like rubber or cotton.
And it caused famine because nobody could eat it?
Yeah, exactly. Rather than, normal crops like corn.
Yeah.
And then their religion and language didn't,
What's left over. Okay. Friend.